Hello, my name is Roisin and welcome back to my channel. So a few weeks ago I did a video where I predicted the books that I thought would end up on the Booker Prize longlist for this year, and I will leave that video linked in the cards above if you would like to go and see what I thought was going to be on it before you watch this video where I'm going to talk about my reactions to the books that actually have ended up on the longlist this year. I've always been interested in Booker. I think that a lot of the books that I have read from Booker shortlists or Booker winners in the past I have really enjoyed. There have been a couple that haven't landed for me, but on the whole I've really enjoyed those books, and I think that a lot of praise has been, I've seen a lot of praise for the shortlist for the long list this year. I've seen the names of the books on the long list, but I haven't properly looked into them to have any actual reactions, so we're going to do that now on camera. So there are 13 books on the Booker long list, and it says at the top here, the long list has been announced, including 3 debuts, the shortest book, as well as the youngest and oldest authors ever nominated. So quite a range by the sounds of that. 2 of the books that I predicted made it onto the long list this year, so we'll start with those ones. The first one is The Colony by Audrey Magee, and I think that this one was on pretty much every long list prediction that I saw. I think that everyone has had an idea that this one was going to be longlisted. It's a lyrical brooding fable to outsiders visiting a small island, and everyone I know who has read it has really loved this book, so I think that it's possibly the most hyped one on the shortlist as far as I'm concerned. And it's about Mr. Lloyd, who has decided to travel to an island off the coast of Ireland by boat without an engine for the authentic experience. Mr. Masson will also be arriving for the summer. Both Englishmen and Frenchmen will strive to encapsulate the truth of this place, one in his paintings, the other with his faithful renditions of speech, the language he hopes to preserve. But the people who live on this rock, 3 miles wide and half a mile long, have their own views on what is being recorded, what is being taken, and what is being given in return. At the end of summer, as the visitors head home, there will be a reckoning. So, as I said, I've heard only good things about this one. I predicted it would be on the long list, so I'm pleased to see it there. I think this one has relation to the Troubles. It occurs in Ireland at the same time as the Troubles, but it's not in the north of Ireland, it's on this island. And so I'm excited for this one. I think that as someone whose family are from Ireland, I want to read more Irish fiction, and this one dissects the gulf between what Ireland is and how the rest of the world wants to fantasize it, according to the judges. So yeah, it sounds brilliant. The other one that I predicted is Glory by NoViolet Bulawayo, and NoViolet Bulawayo was someone that I first heard about when I was doing research because I was reading books from Southern African authors, which I will leave linked in the cards above. And NoViolet Bulawayo is one of the biggest living writers from Zimbabwe, but I couldn't get access to any of her books. But I think this is the second time she's been shortlisted for the Booker Prize, and I think hopefully that will mean her books will be easier to get hold of in libraries now. About animals who live in a unnamed land, quite happily, then the colonisers arrived. After nearly 100 years, a bloody war of liberation brought new hope for the animals, along with a new leader, a charismatic horse who commanded the sun and ruled and kept on ruling. So it's kind of, I guess, Animal Farm-like. I guess it's going to have those comparisons because it's about animals in a country as an allegory for something where this is like colonialism and I imagine the dictatorships and charismatic leaderships that emerged in Africa after independence. But specifically Zimbabwe, because she is a Zimbabwean writer, but I'm imagining it will have more resonance more widely than that. Yeah, this fiction becomes almost reality as we picture the parallel between this animal farm, Zimbabwe, and the fate of many African nations. An ingenious and brilliant political fable that bears witness to the surreal turns of history. So yeah, she was nominated before for We Need New Names, and I am intrigued by this one. It is very long, I think, which is a bit intimidating, and I've never really read, well, I have read Animal Farm, but I don't really read books from this kind of perspective regularly, so it's intriguing, but like I said, it is one that I predicted and several other people predicted, so it's another one that's been fairly well hyped. Okay, the rest will just go down the list. So the first one here is After Sappho, which I don't know anything about, but I'm intrigued by because I studied classics at university, and Sappho was someone that I was very interested in. This is by Selby, Wynn, Shwartz. It's a series of cascading vignettes featuring a multitude of voices. After Sappho hails the female torchbearers of the late 19th and early 20th century. Sarah Bernhardt, Colette, Eleanor Dulce, Lena Poletti, Josephine Baker, Virginia Woolf. These are just a few of the women sharing the pages of a novel as fierce as it is luminous. Lush and poetic, furious and funny. In After Sappho, Selby Schwartz has created a work that celebrates the women and trailblazers of the past and offers hope for our present and our futures. So that's intriguing. It's not what I was expecting from the title, but it's poetic, it's vignette-y. I think there's often books in that style on the shortlist. So this one's going to be quite short, I imagine. A poetic patchwork of fragments of literary history that together take the shape of an intergenerational tale of the lesbian family, an ancestry eruditely, playfully recovered. So interesting. I'm not sure how I'm going to react to this, because I often find books with like multiple generations and things I don't really get it on with so much, like Pachinko, but I don't think it sounds like those books at all. It's just this sort of wide cast of characters, but I think this one sounds like the most, well, this one sounds weird so far. I don't know if it's the most weird, but it definitely sounds a bit odd, and so I think it could be quite hit and miss. Now, one that feels like I'm surprised is on here is Small Things Like These by Keegan, and this is one that I had on my anticipated releases and I have heard some people loving, but for one thing it's really short, and for another, I think Jalen from the Bar of the Bookcase, I saw his review on Instagram and he called it quite twee, so I'm kind of surprised by this one. But this is another Irish book about the Troubles, which I think seems to be being a topic that's much more written about and like getting a lot more favour in the literary world recently than it has in the past. I mean, 2018 Milkman won the Booker Prize, and that was also about the Troubles, so I'm intrigued to see if that's if those books are becoming more public, like more publicised, more bigger than they have in the past, or if there are more of them. I've been wondering about that recently. So this is set in 1985 in an Irish town. During the weeks leading up to Christmas, Bill Furlong, a coal and timber merchant, faces his busiest season. As he does the rounds, he feels the past rising up to meet him and encounters the complicit silences of a small community controlled by the church. I'm always interested in religion in books and controlling religion and small communities and the face of religion there. So yeah, I'm intrigued by this. A story of quiet bravery set in an Irish community in denial of its central secret. Beautiful, clear, economic writing and an elegant structure with moral themes. I'm assuming that's not Troubles related secret. I'm assuming that's a Catholic Church related secret. So maybe the Troubles don't have as much to do with this one. But I have heard people mention them. Then we have Nightcrawling by Leila Mottley, and I think I've seen this one on Bookstagram, but it's not one I really know much about, so we will see. But Leila Mottley was born in 2003, so she's 19 years old, and this is her debut novel, so that's very impressive. And I suppose this is the youngest person ever to have been longlisted for the Booker Prize. Determined to survive in a world that refuses to protect her, a 17-year-old girl finds herself walking the mean streets of Oakland after dark. When she is picked up by the police, the gruesome deal they offer in exchange for her freedom lands her at the centre of a media storm and facing a terrible choice. If she agrees to testify, she could help expose the corruption of a police department, but honesty comes at a price, one that could leave her family vulnerable to retaliation and endanger everyone she loves. So this will be interesting to see. I'm not sure about this one. I don't think I've heard anyone, like I said, I think I've seen it on Bookstagram, but I don't know what anyone thinks of it. The judges have said an electrifying novel set on the streets of Oakland, where the protagonist Kira will face a justice system that oppresses young black women, a spellbinding story and a Catcher in the Rye for a new generation. So very different perspective from Catcher in the Rye, but I don't like the Catcher in the Rye, so who knows if that will have any effect onto whether I like this one or not. But exciting to see like young new voices on the list. I think that there was, I mean, when Shuggie Bain won, there were a lot of debuts on that list as well, so it doesn't seem like that new for them to be having so many debuts, but it was always exciting when they do. One that I've definitely seen people talk about is Maps of Our Spectacular Bodies by Maddie Mortimer, although I've seen people using the name, but I haven't heard any reviews of it yet. Something gleeful and malign is moving in Leah's body. It shapeshifts down the banks of her canals, leaks through her tissues, nooks and nodes. It taps her trachea like the bones of a xylophone. It is spreading. Leah's story is told, in part, by the very thing that's killing her, a malevolent voice that wanders her systems, learning her from the inside out. The novel moves between her past and present as we come to understand the people that have shaped her life. In turn, each of these take up their place, a battle raging within Leah's body, at the centre of which dances the murderous narrator and a boy nicknamed Red, the toxic chemo that is Leah's last hope. Maddie Mortimer was born in 1996, so she is also very young. So I guess, I don't know, I haven't seen if it's a younger list than usual, but it does say it also has the oldest person ever to be nominated. So yeah, so this is a cancer book, a book about cancer. Not something I've read before. I have been meaning to read more books like about illness and disability and things, and this one sounds particularly interesting. I had a friend who had cancer a few years ago, well, a couple of years ago, and she's all clear now, but the red is chemo, that it's a chemo treatment that I think it sounds like is similar to the one that one of the ones that she had, so it will be interesting to read that. It sounds like it's going to be a bit weird and a bit lyrical from the perspective of her cancer, partly. Deliriously inventive and viscerally moving, a narrative that astonishes and overwhelms. Leah's dying while she's living, her past, present and future, a glorious cacophony of voices, and the webs of words that bind her to her daughter, to the mutating cancer that is an inexorable part of herself. Interestingly written, kind of a bit more experimental as well, not quite a straightforward narrative. Now one that I hadn't heard of at all, which is Case Study by Graeme Burnet, who is a Scottish author who was nominated before for his Bloody Project, which is a historical novel. This one is also historical, but set in the 20th century. London, 1965. An unworldly young woman believes that a charismatic psychotherapist, Collins Braithwaite, has driven her sister to suicide. Intent on confirming her suspicions, she assumes a false identity and presents herself to him as a client, recording her experience in a series of notebooks. But she soon finds herself drawn into a world in which she can no longer be certain of anything, even her own character. I think that his Bloody Project was shelved in the thrillers in the library, so I think it has kind of a thriller side to it, and it sounds like this one does too. I mean, it says it's a page-turning blast on the front of it. One of the quotes is from Hannah Kent, who also writes kind of literary crimey novels. Some of her novels have a bit more of that thrillery twist to them, so this one sounds like it's going to be a bit more genre-y than some of the others, and maybe a little more on the commercial end, but like an experimental genre. I don't know, I'm making a lot of assumptions here. A mystery story that takes us into the heart of the psychoanalytical consulting room, or does it? Interleaving a biography of a radical 60s untherapist Collins Braithwaite with the notebooks of his patient Rebecca, a young woman seeking answers about the death of her sister, GMB presents a forensic, elusive and mordantly funny text layered with questions about authenticity and self. So yeah, intriguing. I do like a funny book, especially if it's quite darkly funny, like The Promise last year. Next one that I haven't heard anyone talk about, but was in my anticipated releases when it was about to come out. So it's published last October. So in my autumn releases of 2021, you will see Treacle Walker by Alan Garner. This was one, yeah, that I was intrigued by. And Alan Garner, I was born in 1934, so I'm assuming that he is the oldest person to have been nominated for the Booker, because he's nearly 90. Joe Coppock squints at the world with a lazy eye. He reads his comics, collects birds' eggs, and treasures his marbles, particularly his prized daubers. When Treacle Walker appears off the moor one day, a wanderer, a healer, an unlikely friendship is forged, and the young boy is introduced to a world he could never have imagined. In this playful, moving, and evocative fable, set in his beloved Cheshire, the masterly Alan Garner delivers both a stunning fusion of myth and folklore and a profound exploration of the fluidity and of time. I always love books that involve myth or folklore, that sort of thing, so that is probably why I was drawn to this one. Interesting that a man who's nearly 90 is writing a book from the perspective of a child. I think that's going to be quite an interesting read. I don't know when it's set, but it sounds like it's kind of set in a no time that is every time. That's just my assumption from folklore anyway. Bare to the bone in late style, this tiny book compresses all its themes: time, childhood, language, science and landscape, entangled into a single, calmly plaintive cry. This one is another very short book, so I'm hoping some of these short books make it onto the shortlist, because I am intending to read it again this year, but I think this one sounds like it's going to be quite poignant and beautiful. One that I've seen, like Moles by Moonlight, I think, on Bookstagram, very pleased to see on the shortlist, on the long list, is The Trees by Percival Everett, but that's, sorry if you can hear the bin men. But that is the only person that I've ever heard talk about it at all, and I don't know anything about it again. Something strange is afoot in Money, Mississippi. A series of brutal murders are eerily linked to the presence at each crime scene of a second dead body, that of a man who resembles Emmett Till, a young black boy lynched in the same town 65 years before. The investigating detectives soon discover that uncannily similar murders are taking place all over the country. As the bodies pile up, the detectives seek answers from a local root doctor who's been documenting every lynching in the county for years. So a book about lynchings, I guess that's why it's called The Trees. I have heard about Emmett Till. This sounds like it's going to be quite dark, quite strange, all things that I've been leaning towards recently, kind of weird, dark, kind of experimental books with a bit of maybe magic, maybe something else going on. It sounds like there could be something behind this that isn't quite normal. Eerie, provocative, blackly comic southern noir, a page turner with a sharp provocative edge as it harks back to the real life murder of the young Emmett Till and has important things to say about race. So a page turner, which is, again, not all Booker books are page turners, so interesting to see that there have been a few on this list that have been described that way. And blackly comic and eerie are both things that I love in books, so I think I would quite enjoy this one. I think this one is going to be one that I want to read regardless of whether it makes it to the shortlist. So then we have another one, Trust by Hernan Diaz, and I think I've heard of Hernan Diaz as a writer. He's not been longlisted before. I've heard this name. I don't know maybe if people were talking about this novel, but I'm unsure. Anyway, this is a legendary Wall Street tycoon. She is the daughter of eccentric aristocrats. Together they have risen to the very top. But at what cost have they acquired their immense fortune? This is the mystery at the centre of Bonds, a successful 1938 novel that all New York seems to have read. But there are other versions of this tale of privilege and deceit. Trust draws these compelling narratives into conversation with each other and in tension with the perspective of one woman bent on disentangling fact from fiction. The result is a provocative and propulsive novel that spans an entire century and becomes more exhilarating with each new revelation. Now, this one sounds really intriguing. I'm drawn into this one. So we have a novel within a novel. We have this whole spanning of a century and unfurling of a mystery. So another one that maybe is a page turner. But last year's Great Circle spanned a century and I didn't love that one. But this one doesn't have two dual timelines. So I don't know, maybe I will enjoy it. This novel challenged us to rethink what we know about the institutions on which nations are built and the narratives by which stories are told. Sly, sophisticated, intensely questioning, writes with assurance determined to rob us of every certainty. I love books that rob me of every certainty. That's exactly what I want from my fiction. So yeah, I think this one sounds the most interesting out of any of them that I have read about so far. I'm intrigued to see how this unfolds. And yeah, I hope I like it. I hope, if I get to read it, I like it. Another one that was on my anticipated releases is The Seven Moons of Maali Almeida by Shehan Karunatilaka. And this one is, Shehan Karunatilaka is one of Sri Lanka's foremost authors. There was a Sri Lankan author on the shortlist last year, Anuk Arun Pragazam was on it last year. So Sri Lankan fiction obviously doing quite well at the moment. This is set in Colombo in 1990. Maali Almeida, war photographer, gambler and closet queen, has woken up dead in what seems like a celestial visa office. His dismembered body is sinking in the Beira Lake and he has no idea who killed him. At a time when scores are settled by death squads, suicide bombers and hive goons, the list of suspects is depressingly long. But even in the afterlife, time is running out for Maali. He has 7 moons to try and contact the man and woman he loves most and lead them to a hidden cache of photos that will rock Sri Lanka. So this sounds interesting, set in the afterlife, but another mystery. There seems to be a lot of like crime and mystery and like unfolding of things going on in this long list this year, which is intriguing. Perhaps more plotty than the past, although sometimes you read the synopsis of a book that is like literary but with mystery involved, and you read the synopsis and you think there's going to be a lot going on and there is no plot. And the mystery is kind of tangential to what's going on, but it's the only thing to write in the synopsis because nothing else happens. So yeah, I don't know if we can assume that it's actually going to be like super mysterious, but I like books that have ghosts in. I've discovered not like scary boo ghosts, but the hauntings of the past, particularly in relation to politics, which I think this one is going to be. Those things intrigue me. So Life After Death in Sri Lanka, an afterlife noir, another noir, and with nods to Dante and Buddha, and yet unpretentious. Fizzes with energy, imagery and ideas against a broad, surreal vision of the Sri Lankan civil wars. Broad, surreal visions of moments of import in history and politics, very much my thing. So this sounds interesting. Not sure Booker are the best people to judge what's unpretentious, but we'll see. Next one that I know that Matthew Sharapa must have been excited to see on here because he loves Elizabeth Strout. And this is Oh William by Elizabeth Strout, as I said. This Elizabeth Strout is a best-selling novelist, is like more on the more commercially, like people know about her. She's a book group book, which is not to say that it's not good, just that it's more on the commercial end, I think. This is a sequel, I'm assuming, if it's like a sequel where you have to have read the first one, or if it's just a book set in the same like world. I don't know. Lucy Barton is a successful writer living in New York, navigating the second half of her life as a recent widow and parent to 2 adult daughters. A surprise encounter leads her to reconnect with William, her first husband, and long-time on-again, off-again friend and confidant. Recalling their college years, the birth of their daughters, the painful dissolution of their marriage, and the lives they built with other people, Strout weaves a portrait stunning in its subtlety of a tender, complex, decades-long partnership. So as well as being a best-selling author, Elizabeth Strout is also a Pulitzer Prize winner. So she's got accolades in both areas, which is interesting. No one writes interior life as Strout does. This is meticulously observed writing, full of probing psychological insight. Lucy Barton is one of literature's immortal characters, brittle, damaged, unravelling, vulnerable, and most of all, ordinary, like all of us. This sounds like it's going to be much more of a character-focused book. I haven't read any Elizabeth Strout, or really any reviews of Elizabeth Strout, so I don't know how I will feel about her writing, but I do love the way that they are packaged. And the quote on the front is by Hilary Mantel, who says, "A superbly gifted storyteller and a craftsman in a league of her own." You know how I feel about Hilary Mantel. So yeah, hopefully I will like this one if I ever get to it. And then the final one is another one that was on my anticipated releases, so it is another epic historical fiction, and this is Booth by Karen Joy Fowler. Junius is the Booth patriarch, a celebrated Shakespearean actor who fled bigamy charges in England. He is both a mesmerising talent and a man of terrifying instability. As his children grow up in a remote farmstead in 1830s rural Baltimore, the country draws ever closer to the boiling point of civil war. Of the 6 Booth siblings who survive to adulthood, each has their own dreams they might fight to realise. But it is Johnny who makes the shocking decision that will change the course of history. So, John Wilkes Booth assassinated Lincoln, I think. My knowledge of American history is not that strong, but I'm pretty sure that is who we're talking about here. And it's about his childhood, his family, as a way of talking about America leading up to Civil War, I'm assuming. Karen Joy Fowler has been nominated before for We Are All Completely Beside Ourselves, a book that my mother loved, but I have never read. What shapes us, and who gets to choose the stories we tell about our place in the world? With an eagle eye and bone-dry wit, Fowler introduces the Booths, a 19th century family forged by theatrical ambition and agonising grief within a household steeped in the racism and myth-making of the disunited states. As the novel unfolds, we know, and they don't, that one day the 9th child, John Wilkes, will step forward with a gun in his hand and bring the narratives of dynasty and country decisively together. So yeah, one I was excited to read, but I haven't heard anyone review, so I don't know how it pans out, what people think of it as a book in general. It's just one that I was intrigued by the synopsis, which I think I can say for all of the books on this long list. Often on long lists there are books that I'm not really that interested in, that don't sound up my street, but I think having read all those having read all those synopses, I think most of them I'm intrigued by. I think After Sappho is the one that I am not sure I would like the most, because I'm not really into this kind of disconnected vignette style like Patricia Lockwood. It just doesn't really work for me, or at least it hasn't yet. So that's the one that I would be the most unsure of, but the one that I was most intrigued by the title, but that's mostly because of Sappho. So I don't know. We'll have to see when the reviews come in, what people think of them. I think I will only be reading the shortlist, or I will only commit to reading the shortlist. I don't think I'm gonna manage the long list as well. But there are definitely some books on there that if they don't make it to the shortlist, I will still be wanting to read. So yeah, it sounds like it's going to be an exciting year for Booker this year. I feel like I'm seeing more hype than usual. I don't know, but I feel like I am. And so we'll see how it goes. But let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. I'd love to hear which ones you are intrigued by, and which ones you've read, if any of them. I would love to know. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Please remember to like this video if you liked it, and to subscribe. I put out new videos twice a week. There'll be a couple here for you to check out if you are interested, and I will see you again very soon. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.